As the slanting rain fell outside the windows of their home, Lewis and his brother Warren, or Warnie as he was affectionately known, passed the long, wet Belfast days inside. The miserable weather and their mother's fear that her sons might contract an infectious disease from being caught in a rain shower meant that the two Lewis boys spent a disproportionate percentage of their youth indoors. With little to entertain them but their imaginations, they set to work with their pencils, chalk, paints, and paper. Though separated by 3 years of age, the two boys became and remained the very best of friends, even into adulthood. They found immense pleasure in each other's company and in the creative pursuits which they shared in common. Lewis's brilliance and intellectual acuity were obvious from an early age, sometimes taking the form of precociousness. When he was 4 years old, Lewis decided, as many children do, that he did not like his given name, Clive. One day he simply announced that his name was Jaxie and refused to answer to any other. The name stuck, soon shortened to Jack, by which he was known to all his close friends for the rest of his life. Lewis was, by his own admission, of a romantic temperament from his earliest days. The green hills of Castlereagh, visible from the nursery window, were only the first in a series of sights and events that inspired the romantic vision. They were not very far off, but they were, to children, quite unobtainable. They taught me longing, Sehnsucht, made me, for good or ill, and before I was 6 years old, a votary of the blue flower. The blue flower image is drawn from a book by the German romantic poet and novelist Novalis, who used it as a symbol for a sort of transcendent inkling of supernatural joy, a longing to be merged into the very mystery of things. Though he could not yet express it in words, these are the kinds of feelings that haunted the young Lewis. That same sense of inconsolable longing was activated by the memory, while standing one morning in the garden, of a toy garden his brother had given to him in the nursery, a garden in a biscuit tin, filled with moss, stones, twigs, and small flowers. It also surfaced while reading a Beatrix Potter story, Squirrel Nutkin, and in the reading of a translation of an old Icelandic epic. Analyzing these experiences, Lewis found that their common quality was an unsatisfied desire, which is itself more desirable than any other satisfaction. At the time, this was the closest thing to a religious experience he was to have, since the family religion of his childhood meant little to him. This experience, similar to that described by William Wordsworth and Thomas Traherne, was in reality a desire for and a sense of the presence of God, though only later in life would this realization dawn on him. Interestingly, little of this romantic sense can be found in Lewis's childhood writing. In those long hours in their rooms, Jack and Warnie imagined a land called Boxen, where chivalrous frogs came to the aid of King Bunny of Animal Land, or engaged in various political machinations. The numerous stories the brothers wrote and illustrated about the history of Boxen are surprisingly prosaic, lacking in the poetry, romance, and invention that mark Jack's adult work. Instead, the stories became part of a mammoth game of creating an entire integrated history of this imaginary place, complete with chronologies, maps, and lists of rulers. As other boys did, Jack and Warnie loved the outdoors and made full use of the days they were allowed outside. They would ride their bikes and explore the neighborhood. They also treasured the frequent trips by train to